Copyright in the age of AI. I think I'm not going to get into sort of a technical discussion here. I'm not the right person to do that. But the takeaway really is that the future is now. This stuff exists. So what you're looking at right here are not real images. Those are not real people. They do not exist. They were put together by a company out of Russia, sort of a startup called Generated Photos. You might have seen some articles about this a couple of weeks ago. They look pretty real. There's certainly the potential for those images to replace some of what we license. And so I think as an industry, we have to really start thinking about this, because it's only getting better. These are only faces, but and most of this is handled by, I'm not going to go into the technology again, but by what's called GANs, or generative adversarial networks. And it's basically machine learning that is trained on, mostly it's going to be real images that exist, that are protected by copyright, and can output basically this. And so this is in front of us, and it's something that we need to now to rethink the interaction between computers, the creative process, and copyright. And it is something that regulators are thinking about. And they're thinking about not necessarily in the context of our industry or the copyright context. They're thinking about deep fakes, and you've probably heard about them. But these are images or even videos that use AI to create, inauthentic content. A picture of the president, or a video of the president saying something that never said. This is stuff that is really convincing, and governments across the globe are very concerned about this, and they are very interested in regulating. And I think from our industry perspective, there's a lot of potential for this, and I'll go into a little bit of why I think that. But we want to get our voice out there and make sure that it doesn't get sort of regulated out of existence. And now is really the time to voice that. So there are some clearly unresolved issues, and I don't think we're going to get resolution on these really anytime soon, but I think we need to sort of understand them. And some of the basics are, can copyright exist in synthetic content? This is a question that has been part of copyright for a very long time. If something's being created by a machine, does that meet the requirements for copyrightability? Another question, is permission needed from copyright owner before using an image in a training set? That is certainly up for debate, and I think from the perspective of our industry, we certainly want to protect our copyright, and we do not want our images to be used without permission. Along the same lines, are the synthetic images that are created from these models, can that be considered a derivative work? And should the underlying copyright holder have rights in that work, or be entitled to some sort of remuneration? And then beyond copyright, what privacy issues are implicated? I mean, going through what Sejal just went through, there are certainly, there's biometric data that are in images of models. We as an industry have handled this well. We have releases that can give us rights and that we can commercially exploit. Can we use those same practices in the context of AI? And finally, should the law regulate the use of synthetic content? And if it is, what should those regulations look like? There can be regulations that stop sort of like the deep fakes, but they can also enable the productive and beneficial use of this technology. So going into sort of the copyright considerations, and I touched on this a little bit, but there are really two elements to consider. As I said before, in order to create this synthetic content, you need to actually have real images that the model is trained on. And so you need to think about what are the rights in that underlying training data. And then when synthetic content is actually created, are there any copyright that attaches to that? And what sort of factors do we need to look at? Is there some sort of human involvement? And if there is, who owns that copyright going forward? And then one other part of this too is how do we track and maintain consistency about what content is available? And so if training data is used, should there be a requirement for tracking what training data is used, what images are used? And currently, there really are no standards for that. A lot of this stuff is being handled in the academic sense, or by startup companies out of Russia that may not be thinking about these sorts of audit trails. So I think we want to also think about policies that can benefit the human creators that are behind the training data that are used here. And so I think there are a couple sort of policy things, and I don't think we've really articulated exactly what these policies are going to be, and I think that's something that we need to consider as an industry. But I think these are just some ideas that can throw out there. One of them is to explicitly recognize images as a unique category in the regulation of synthetic content. And I think that really that's sort of a protection against over-regulation. Let's not treat everything the same. There can be a vibrant market for the commercial exploitation of this stuff. Let's not close that off before it can even get started. I think another thing we want to make clear is that there needs to be prior authorization to include copyrighted content as training data. You should have to go get a license from the underlying copyright owner if you're going to train data. And where applicable, and it's not, I don't think it's always going to be the case. Like I said before, there has to be some sort of human involvement. But think about when we can introduce copyright protection for synthetic content. Otherwise, if there's no copyright for synthetic content, then obviously, the business model for licensing content sort of goes away, and you can have a huge amount of content that's not protected that anyone can use for any purpose. And then why would somebody come and license content if you can't really distinguish authentic content from synthetic content? And then finally, I think that we want to be able to think about applying the same principles of licensing in our traditional models. We've been doing this for a while now, and I think we have some really good policies and practices. For instance, being able to store model releases and have an understanding of what's editorial and what's commercial, and use all of the same understandings that are well established.
I think the last section you were going to touch on was privacy, kind of dovetailing from what Sejal said.
Yeah, exactly. And so beyond copyright, so we have real privacy considerations, and biometric data is is in a photo. So or machines can look at photos and make real assumptions about that person. And when that person is then included in a training set, how can you deal with those privacy implications? Do you need to get consent ahead of time from those models before you even consider, say, selling your images to be used in a training set? So yeah, and I think that it needs to be clear that the burden to respect privacy rights should really rest on whoever is creating the synthetic work. That plays well into our industry because if you want to meet those obligations, come get your licenses from somebody who is a reputable distributor of content and has the rights. You know, I think, as I said, privacy needs to be addressed through disclosure and consent, and you know, we really want to promote the protection of privacy through responsible commercial practices. So some final thoughts on this. So I think as an industry, we can look at synthetic content as an opportunity. Yes, it is certainly disruptive, but we are really well placed to exploit this. As I said before, there can be positive or negative outcomes, and I think we need to be really careful. And I think that we can also give a voice to legislators to understand that there are productive, beneficial usage of synthetic content. And along those lines, if we want our voice to be taken seriously, you know, we have to show the respect for copyright and privacy and those rights that I outlined.